Typical university class has really only two channels of communication. The professor talks like this, and students ask questions and maybe occasionally talk to each other. But it's a very limited range of channels of communication. In my online classes, I play with this in different ways in different classes. There are a lot of different channels. Some are talking oriented, some are text oriented, some are public, some are private, some are one-to-one, some are one-to-many. I mean, you can multiply these possibilities yourself. And the nice thing about an online class is you can exploit all those possibilities. Why do we have to limit ourselves to simply a lecture or simply a Q&A? Some can be synchronous, some can be asynchronous. I forgot that one as well. And so one of the possibilities I think that's really useful here is the multiplicity of different channels of communication, which, again, evolve in relationship to people's uses and values and priorities to being developed and implemented in different ways and in very personal and idiosyncratic ways. You know, when I was first teaching online, now 13 or so years ago, you know, I still had a lot of colleagues who said, well, students just aren't going to interact as much online as they do in the classroom. Well, I have to tell you, I've been in a lot of university classrooms. I have a lot of university classrooms in which students didn't interact much at all, and in which certain students never interacted at all. In my online classes, in general, there's a lot more participation. If by participation you mean communicatively engaging others, you know, one way or another, there's a lot more interaction and participation in my online class, partly because students find the channels that are comfortable for them, right? Some students, I mean, my classes now, you can have a video link, you can have a voice link, you can have a text link, you know, in the synchronous sessions. And it's interesting to me to see the students who only prefer one or the others. Some only want to use the voice to talk to me or to talk to the rest of the class. Other students never use the voice. They only want to use the text. International students often feel a lot more comfortable in the text-based medium because they can write something, proofread it, edit it, and then push the send button. Whereas in a speaking-oriented classroom, they're often disadvantaged because by the time they formulate in English what they want to say, the conversation's already moved on to something else. So I don't want to hear any romanticization about the traditional face-to-face classroom and what a warm, intimate, you know, it can be that, but many students, in fact, do not experience it that way. They experience it as intimidating, they experience it as silencing, and they actually feel disadvantaged by the particular channels of communication that are privileged in that venue. One of the advantages of online education is that you can multiply those channels, and with that, give people a broader range of possibilities for picking and shaping and adapting the channels of communication that work best for them. A second thing that we're seeing with the internet is, and I think again that I'm saying things that you already know, where people get knowledge and information from is changing. I won't talk a lot about blogging. I'm going to say some critical things about blogs in a second, not my own, but the others. But this is one thing I think that we've really seen, that the sources of knowledge and information for people have exploded through the internet. Blogs are one example of it, so I'll use blogs as the example. People don't have to go to the New York Times anymore, or the Washington Post, or even Fox News to get news or information or commentary, especially the commentary. You can go to Bob, you know, sitting in his basement somewhere, who has Bob's blog. I'm making that up. You know, Bob sits in his pajamas and says, here's what I think about Obama or George Bush, or pick your political party. And if Bob is interesting and smart and funny and a good writer, or some combination of those things, Bob will get an audience. You know, and Bob may get an audience that's every bit as broad as George Will's, right? Just to pick one person, or David Brooks, or Paul Krugman. Because in this medium, what's valued is interesting, original analysis and insight, and it can come from anywhere. So I think blogs are an example of I will say can be an example of a radical democratizing of where and from whom people get news and information and commentary. The blogosphere, the internet generally, is a kind of public space, which is, again, transforming our democracy. By inviting and enlarging and giving voice to a broader community of people, did I say more diverse? Also potentially more diverse than the institutionalized sources of news and information and commentary can ever match. You pick almost any topic you want, and you can find 1,000 or 10,000 people writing about it on the internet. Most of them are probably not smart, interesting, funny, or good writers, but there's a process, and it's part of the interesting things about the internet. Things that are good tend to get promoted, through people linking to them, or people saying, oh, you got to read this PBD thing, this is really great, right? And suddenly, if there are things that are valuable, they do tend to rise to the surface. People sometimes call this the short head and the long tail. A relatively small number of, in any particular area, a relatively small number of sites account for a very large percentage of the clicks or links or eyeballs or whatever you want to call them. And then the vast majority, the other 80% or whatever it is, share the very small percentage that's left over. There's some interesting problems with that I'll talk about in a second. But it isn't just an arena of accessing knowledge and information, and this is what people usually mean when they talk about Web 2.0. Web 1.0 was the web as an encyclopedia or library. What is the weather in Oslo, Norway? I'm flying there and I want to know what to pack in my suitcase. Well, you can go online and actually see a video camera and a weather report about what the weather's like in Oslo. What did the Chicago Blackhawks do last night in Vancouver? I looked it up first thing this morning. Personal confession there. A long time ago when I was picking schools for my daughter in California, I could find information about the test scores, and the performance of those schools in California. So I think that's great, and people still continue to use the web that way. But the so-called Web 2.0 revolution is that increasingly people are using the web not just to access information and knowledge, but to create information and knowledge, usually in collaborative ways. Blogs are another example of this. Someone named David Weinberger, who has a great little lecture on blogs and knowledge, I can send you the link if you wanted it, says that blogs are defined by an ethos of generosity. That what makes blogs blogs is that people are continually linking to, quoting, and commenting on one another. It's a rare blog that just says, read my blog, this is what I think, this is me. Blogs are themselves part of a network of interlinked interests in any area. I'm going to talk about it primarily in the context of news and political information, because that's closest to the theme of this talk, but it's true in recipes and a lot of other areas as well, that bloggers are continually saying, well, I actually got this from Craig's blog, right? Or if you like my blog, read this guy's blog, or literally quoting one another. That collaborative process of sharing, combining, you've heard about mashups, where you take something from a couple of different sites and you recombine them in a new way. So the Web 2.0 is a dynamic and creative medium, not just a medium of disseminating and accessing information or points of view. And finally, I want to talk about the ways in which technology is changing the way that we form and participate in communities. Through social networking technologies, through Facebook and a variety of other mediums, people aren't just sending or shaping or communicating information, they're also building relationships, often in widely distributed and non-face-to-face ways. Think about, for example, to take an obvious case, that the meaning of the word friend has changed because of Facebook. I mean, what does it really mean to say, I've got 4,000 friends? Now, there's, like everything else, there's a good and a bad aspect of that. I don't have 4,000 friends. Despite AG's best efforts, I'm not on Facebook yet. And I don't particularly want 4,000 friends. I probably have 4,000 personal and professional connections. I might know 4,000 people's names through my work or one thing or another, but I don't want 4,000 friends. If I have 4,000 friends, then I have no friends, right? I have 5 friends or 10 friends or 20 friends. And then I have a slightly larger group of people I'm friendly with, but I wouldn't necessarily call them friends. But
I don't
I'm
think
all-
it's true that if you
There
have
you go.
4,000 friends, you have no friends. I just don't think that's true.
well, but then some are different kinds of friends
Well,
than the
yes,
others.
of course.
Well,
We'll
then
say that,
okay.
yes.
So we can call them then friends and friends prime, or
Yeah.
friends.
But you still have friends.
Friends with a small f and friends
The
with a
4,000
big.
doesn't displace your true friends.
No, but you have to start putting in those qualifiers. That's the point.
Right.
My real friends, my personal friends versus my friends. We put them in quotation marks. That's the sense in which I mean.